from Mumbai, Pune, Bangalore, Baroda. Okay, some more people from Thane. Great to see you guys over here. It's a pleasure to be hosting all of you. My name is Sanjay Dhingra. I'm going to do detailed introduction shortly. I'm going to also introduce you to our panelists very shortly. But before we do that, let us know the city you're dialing in from. Keep those responses coming in. Tells us that you're active over here and are able to hear us clearly. So great. I saw someone from Gujarat, Ahmedabad, Chitradurga, Hyderabad. Okay, I lived in Hyderabad for a fairly long time. I see some more people from Thane, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad. So all over. I see someone from Kuala Lumpur as well. Hey, Kartini, thank you for joining in. Faridabad, someone is dialing in from Sri Lanka as well. So basically the whole of India represented over here and some from the subcontinent as well. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining this extremely insightful session. My name is Sanjay Dhingra. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder at Seed Global Education Limited. We are a UK headquartered company that specializes in such interactions. We facilitate interaction between higher education aspirants like you who are attending this session and top engineering schools like NYU-Tandon, who is our panelist over here in today's session. In today's session, we are going to speak with NYU-Tandon, which is amongst the top engineering schools in the US, as I mentioned. It is also amongst the second oldest private engineering and technology school in the United States, founded in 1854. The school's main campus is in Brooklyn. It, of course, needs no further introduction than this. Of course, everyone knows NYU-Tandon. If you're an engineering student in India or looking for higher engineering studies outside of India, most likely you have heard of NYU-Tandon before. But still, to tell you a little bit more about it and some of its rankings, it's ranked number 9 on QS's graduate employment rankings. So really top 10 over there in terms of employability. It is also ranked number 33 on US News's best colleges for engineering programs in 2022. So really top school over there. In today's session, we are going to interact with Liana Kovales, who is the Director of Enrollment Marketing and Recruitment at NYU-Tandon. We are also going to hear from Ryan Klowacki, who is a recruitment specialist with the school. Before I bring in Liana and Ryan to tell you about how you can ace your application to an engineering program, and especially how you can ace your application to NYU-Tandon's master's engineering programs, let me quickly run 2 polls for the evening. I'm going to start the first poll for the session right now on the screen. You'll be able to see it momentarily on your screen. The poll question is, are you applying to a STEM master's program in the USA this year? The options are yes, no, or the third option is not this year, but planning for the future. So this tells us where you are in your application or decision-making journey. So let us know if you're applying to a STEM master's program in the USA this year. The options are yes, if you're applying this year, no, if you have no plans as of now, or option 3, which is not this year, but planning for the future. So if you're looking to apply in 2023, 2024, or later, choose the third option. Let us know that you're planning for the future and you're a little ahead in your journey right now. Great, I have around 139 responses. I'm going to wait to touch the 150 mark. So if you haven't yet responded, please do respond quickly. I'm going to keep this open for another 2 seconds. And with that, I'm going to end the poll. We touched the 150 mark. I'm going to share the results on the screen as well. So you're able to see that around 31% of the audience is looking to apply this year. So out of 150, that's around 50 people in this room who have responded, who are looking to apply to an engineering master's program this year. I'm assuming you are either final year undergraduate student in India or a graduate with just 1 or 2 years of work ex. There are around 59% who are planning to apply in the future, not this year, maybe in 2023 or 2024. So you are the early starters as such. You're preparing well in advance. So great to see that. I am now also going to run our second poll for the evening right now, which you can see on your screen, which is around what do you find most intimidating about making your application? Basically, what scares you the most if you're looking to apply to a STEM master's program in the US? What about the application scares you the most? Is it writing the SOP? Is it securing the LORs, so you're getting your recommendations? Is it getting a good enough GRE score for your dream school? Is it securing a good IELTS or TOEFL score? Is it arranging the documentation, so transcripts, other documentation that you need for your application docket? Is it securing financing, or is it something else? So I'm going to explain the question once more. We have already 100+ responses for this poll, but I'm going to explain the question once more. So if you are looking to apply to a STEM master's program, maybe this year or next year or in the future, what about making your application scares you the most? Is it writing the SOP? Is it securing the LORs? Is it getting a good enough GRE score for your dream school? securing a good enough IELTS or TOEFL score, arranging the transcripts and other documentation, securing financing, or something else that intimidates or scares you the most. I'm going to leave the poll open for another 5 seconds. I have 135 responses approximately. Hopefully, I'll touch the 150 mark as well. If you haven't responded, please do evaluate this poll question and do respond. In the meanwhile, those of you who have just joined us, it's great to see you all over here. I see Salma, who's joined in from Morocco. I see Sneha from Dubai. I saw people from Mumbai, Sri Lanka, all over the place. So welcome, everyone. It's great to be hosting you. I am going to end this poll question now. Unfortunately, we did not touch the 150 mark over here. 141 out of the 255 people responded to this poll question. The biggest area of concern is securing financing. So funding is the biggest area of challenge. So loans, scholarships, that's the one biggest area. The second biggest area or the biggest challenge is getting a good enough GRE score, followed by writing a great, impressive SOP, and so on and so forth. So in today's session, we are going to talk to Liana and Ryan about all of these factors. We will talk to them about what you can do to get how important is a GRE score in their admission decision-making process. How can you impress the panel by writing a great SOP? What are the funding opportunities that are possibly available, whether it's scholarships, your research assistantships, part-time work employment, or loans, other opportunities as such. And we'll discuss possibly all of these aspects that we covered through the poll. With that, let me invite Ryan and Liana to come online now and talk to us about acing the NYU-Tandon application process. As I said, Ryan is a recruitment specialist over here. He's going to take us through his presentation on acing the application. And Liana is the Director of Graduate Enrollment and Recruitment at NYU-Tandon. And she's also going to come in during the Q&A and tell us about what you can do to improve your chances of getting an admit and a scholarship, possibly a scholarship at NYU-Tandon, any other top school like Tandon. So with that, over to you, Ryan.
All right. Can you see my screen, Sanjay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. Well, first off, thank you very much for inviting us to speak to you all this evening. It's morning here in New York City. So my apologies, I've only had 1 cup of coffee so far. So if I stumble over my words, I have at least 2 or 3 cups of coffee in a day. So I apologize for that. But we're going to talk about specifically this morning, acing the NYU-Tandon Master's application process. Again, my name is Ryan Glowacki. I'm joined with Leanna Koala. She's going to jump in here with her thoughts as well as we kind of move through this presentation. Let's see here. So this is a kind of a quick agenda on what this presentation is about. So first, we'll go over how to research your different options in master's programs and things you can do to find a perfect fit. Then we'll go through the application process and talk a bit about admissions integrity. Then we'll talk about letters of recommendation, the statement of purpose, some of the things you are a bit worried about that we just learned about in the poll, some testing requirements, talking a bit about the GRE and the TOEFL, and then a little bit about how to communicate with faculty. Should I communicate with faculty? When should I do it? What should those communications look like? So before you research your options for graduate school, it's good to know what is important to you. So these are just a few of the things that when I was looking for a master's degree, and when many people are doing this, it's a good place to start. What's important to you? Some people, it's academic rigor. It may be a school's ranking, the school's name. Academic excellence, the certain faculty that are teaching at a school. For others, it may be the curriculum, electives, and specializations. You think, what is it that I want this degree to accomplish for me? And then knowing that to go and find a curriculum that fits very well. Unlike a lot of undergrad, graduate school should have a very strong fit to your goals. You shouldn't find yourself with a curriculum that a good number of the courses are not of interest to you. So it's important to find out what the exact curriculum of a program looks like. What about a commitment to international students? Here in the United States, there are schools that have very large international student populations. NYU is one of those schools. And then there are some schools that have much smaller international student populations. Depending on what you're after or what you are looking for, that can be important for you to have thought about. Diversity on campus is important. That is not, again, NYU has a very diverse campus student body. Not the case at every school in the United States. So it's something to think about. A campus's culture, opportunities for research. Some master's programs are research intensive and others are not. There are some programs where students are wanting to come in and primarily complete coursework and then use that coursework to head out into industry and are not as interested in doing research while they're on campus. So different schools will kind of approach research differently. And then networking or employment opportunities, are those important to you? Primarily in the United States, there are two types of institutions. I think this is just important to know. There are public institutions, which are schools that receive state funding and very often have different tuition rates for in-state residents, people that grew up in that state, and in theory have paid taxes towards their future education at that school. And then there are out-of-state students and international students that may have a very different tuition rate because they did not put in taxes towards that institution throughout their life. And then there are private institutions. NYU is a private institution. So revenue at private institutions is from tuition and endowments. Tuition is typically the same for domestic and international students. Tuition is typically higher for domestic students at a private institution, but private institutions often have more scholarships or higher scholarship amounts. So often tuition is much more augmented by scholarships at private institutions than what you may see at public institutions. And that's the same for international students as well. So real quick, other things to consider when you're researching options and finding a perfect fit. At the graduate level, think about things beyond the school's ranking. Start looking at things like physical location. We are the extreme with our physical location in that we are located in the center of New York City. We're in Manhattan and we're in Brooklyn. NYU-Tandon, the engineering school, is in downtown Brooklyn. Many institutions, many of the big universities in the United States are actually in very small towns. I went to a school where the school was around 50,000 students, but in a very small town in Illinois. So it was a big school in an island of corn. That's where I did my undergrad. I was not as interested in doing that for graduate school. So I did not do that for graduate school. I went to a big city. Curriculum, does it match your goals? We talked a little about that earlier. Internship and research opportunities, alumni networks, outcome data is important, I think, for graduate students, especially if industry is where you're headed. What does that return on investment look like? Starting salaries, ease of finding a job. Again, that's something that's different in a big city like New York versus maybe a small town where many of our universities in the United States are located. So let's get to the meat of this program, which is the applying to graduate school and how to ace that application process. So first, we wanted to start with an application timeline. So when do Sanjay's poll showed that many of you are maybe at more than a year out from applying to graduate school. So when should you begin that process of application? And it actually begins really the spring and summer, 1.5 years away from the start of your school. So for those of you that are looking at 2023, you should have already kind of identified schools and should be starting the application process now. But for those of you that are a ways out, spring and summer of this coming year would be a good time to start exploring schools so that you can then be familiar with what's required to apply, especially when it comes to things like testing, GRE exams, TOEFLs, GMATs, things like that. You'll need to study up for those tests And that process will take some time as well. And then you'll need to sit for an exam and schedule that, and then leave time for those exam scores to make their way to us here in the United States. All of that takes time. So you'll want to begin to prepare for those GRE exams in the summer before the fall season when you will apply. August and September are a good time to prepare your application. You've by then narrowed your schools down. I'm a big fan of writing an early draft of a statement of purpose and then letting it sit, let it marinate. Go back midway through your application and take a look at it again. It's interesting when we write. Writing is an interesting process in that you can put a lot of emotion in your writing that then later when you go back and read it, you're like, oh, why did I say it like that? I need to adjust that. So I'm a big fan of writing a draft of a statement of purpose and then revisiting it maybe 2 or 3 times as you kind of distill it down to just what's really important. And then you'll want to start that process of lining up and confirming your letter writers, your recommenders. October, November is really for us here at Tandon the best time to be submitting applications, and then watch out for deadlines. We have for our master's programs early deadlines. Our priority deadline is actually December 1st for master's programs. And then we have a general deadline or a final deadline for master's programs in February. So as you are looking at schools, it's important to know your deadlines. Leanna, anything to add there? We good? Okay.
Nope, you got it.
Okay, very good. Moving forward, let's look at some of like what is required. And again, I base this off of our application process. Certain schools may have different applications that may require different documents or may not require certain things. So that'll be part of your process of researching different schools is what does each school actually require. So Tandon, we have an online application. You're going to fill that out in our application portal. There's an application fee. We're going to require transcripts. We'll need transcripts from every school you've attended after your secondary education. So after high school, we would need any university level transcripts. If you've attended 3 or 4 schools, then we'll need all of those transcripts from all of those schools. Of course, transcripts must be in English so that we can read them. Standardized test scores. Again, that's your GRE score. Here at Tandon, if you're applying to business schools, it may be a GMAT, but here at Tandon, we utilize the GRE. Some of our programs require the GRE, some of them don't. And so we actually have on our website, if you are exploring our applications page, you'll see whether or not you would be required to take the GRE. This year, that has all been cemented in stone, but for those of you looking at a year out, we leave the GRE requirement up to our departments. And so if a department were to change a GRE requirement, that typically happens in the summer before the application season really opens in September. English proficiency testing is also listed on our website. That would be your TOEFL, your IELTS score. One thing to know about English proficiency testing is that we set minimum scores. And as long as you meet that minimum score, then your application goes on to review. Leanna, correct me if I'm wrong, but as long as you make our minimum score, that is basically what we use English proficiency testing for. We don't necessarily use it like, oh, a better, like maybe a 110 versus a 107 isn't necessarily going to change your admissions decision. It's more like a gate. You have to meet our minimum requirements and then your application is reviewed on merit. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We get a lot of questions from people who want to know if they can submit a higher TOEFL score. Honestly, it's not worth it at all, and no one looks at it. As long as you meet the minimum, as long as you meet the minimum requirement, then you are eligible to apply. But on the flip side of that, our requirement is 90, and I get a lot of people emailing me to ask, oh, I got an 89, can I still apply? And the answer is no. It's a very hard line, whether or not you're 1 point off or 10 points off. You do have to meet that requirement in order to be eligible to apply at all. So if you have an 89, no one will even look at your application because you don't make it through that first gate, as Ryan was saying. And we also get a lot of questions about this in terms of, you know, I studied for 4 years in an English speaking institution. Some schools will waive the TOEFL requirement for that. NYU does not. We still need a TOEFL score, regardless of what language you were educated in.
Very good. Thank you, Leanna. And then other requirements would be letters of recommendation, which we'll go over in a little while, and then the statement of purpose, which we will talk about a bit more in a bit. One thing that I think is worth bringing up is the integrity of your application. So this is something that country to country may be different, but here in the United States, it's the same with academic integrity. Application integrity is very important. So it's important that you complete your own application, that your resume is extremely accurate and represents the experiences that you've actually completed, that your statement of purpose and any other supplemental materials are your own writing. Test scores, of course, transcripts must be unaltered. It's actually why we require test scores to arrive directly from, in this case, ETS, the company that administers the GRE, as opposed to coming from students. That's something we see a lot, is students attempting to upload copies of test scores, which we do not accept. They have to come directly from ETS. And then recommendation letters must be written completely by the recommender, as opposed to letters that are written by the applicant and signed off on by the recommender. So we take this very seriously in the United States, and it's not just NYU, it's every higher education institution. So just a note on application integrity. Let's talk about letters of recommendation. I forgot to take that off. Sorry, guys. Letters of recommendations are also extremely important, but that's left over from the previous slide. A letter of recommendation is a letter of support for your prior academic or employment experiences. At least one should be from a faculty member or a professor who can attest to your academic abilities going forward. As you get farther away from your undergraduate experience, often you may have lost touch with faculty. So that's something that we are aware of here. If you've been working for 10 years and you're looking at going back and getting a master's degree, we know letters of recommendation from a faculty member may be harder to get, but if you are coming straight from your undergraduate experience, it's expected that letters of recommendation should come from, at least one should come from an academic source. And then another can be from an employer or a project or a research supervisor, to add a little diversity among your letters. Here at NYU-Tandon, we require 2, but we will take 3. So a lot of students will typically submit like 2 academic letters and maybe 1 from a research or employer or a supervisor of some sort. And one tip I would give you guys, again, to ace this process is share some of your salient points of maybe your statement of purpose with your recommender, so that their letter can kind of mirror what you want to highlight in your application. So when reaching out to recommenders, don't just say, hey, will you write a letter of recommendation for me? But maybe say, in addition to that, or in a communication with your recommender, let them know what's important to you, why you're applying to graduate school, some of the big reasons that you are embarking on this journey, and then hopefully they will be able to tie that into their letter to make the application more cohesive. Letters should typically include an introduction, how that person knows you, a list of reasons they're recommending you, maybe a personal story that outlines evidence of your qualifications, And then a closing statement. Typically, letters of recommendation are around 1 page in length. So your recommenders, if they're academic, if they're professors, they've written a million of these, so they will know all of this. But if you're giving a letter writer to someone, or you're requesting a recommendation from someone and they're not familiar with the process, this is what a typical letter should include. Anything else on letters of recommendation, Leanna?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo one thing you said about asking for recommenders. What you're trying to do overall, and we'll talk about this even more throughout this presentation and through the Q&A, but what you're trying to do with your application is basically tell your story. And you have several ways to do that. One is your resume, where you can list what you do. One is your personal statement, but the letter of recommendation can be a neutral piece of your application, or it can be an important piece of your application. So we get lots of letters that say, you know, I had so-and-so in my class, they were a good student, I think they'd be great for your program. That is the most common letter, and it's a great letter to get. That's what we want. We just want to make sure there's no red flags. However, as Ryan mentioned, if you want to make your letter actually stand out, asking your recommender to say, hey, professor, could you write a letter of recommendation for me? And maybe could you mention this project that I did in your course? Or internship coordinator, can you write this letter for me, but mention this certain project that I did while I was interning at your company or your research lab. It also helps the recommender, honestly, as someone who has written many of letters of recommendation for people. It is very helpful for me when they let me know what it is they want me to highlight. And so if that makes sense, asking for something specific that can help tell your story really makes the difference between just the standard letter that everyone gets, which isn't negative, into something that is positive towards your application.
Yes, that's very good advice. It's hard to write letters of recommendation, right, Leanna? I mean, it is when you have a number to write, and especially for faculty that may have had some experiences with you, but maybe not a ton, that can be, I think, very helpful and can definitely make a difference. Let's go through and talk more about this statement of purpose. I know that's something that I think it was number 2 or number 3 as far as things you were worried about in our earlier poll. So let's take a look. What is a statement of purpose? It's a strong statement of your goals. A statement of purpose will showcase who you are and help to define your academic and professional goals and interests. They will showcase your goodness of fit with the program you're applying to. Remember, that's something faculty are very concerned about. They want to find students that will be happy in this program. And so this is beyond your transcripts and beyond letters of recommendation. This is especially at with master's applications, where you are not typically speaking to faculty. There's not an interview portion of an application at the master's level. This is that document that's going to help you to highlight your goodness of fit with this program, why this program is a perfect fit. That being said, this is why it's important to personalize letters or these statements of purpose. So if you're applying to 12 schools, we shouldn't know that as we are reading your statement of purpose. It should be specific to, in our case, Tandon's electrical engineering master's program. So try to make these statements of purpose as personal to the exact program as you can, which means that you will probably have 10 or 11 statements of purpose if you are applying to a lot of different schools. So you'll just want to make sure that you tailor the statement of purpose to the program to highlight goodness of fit. Also showcase your value that you plan to add to the academic program. That's something that I think can help make a statement of purpose stand out. And think of the purpose of the statement of purpose as the document that will convince the selection committee, which here is made up of faculty, that your prior achievements are showing a strong likelihood of success in their specific graduate program. Leanna, anything here as we're as we're looking at a statement of purpose?
Yeah, I just wanted to add again to my last point, make sure that all the different parts of your application complement each other. So you're already submitting a resume or CV, and you don't need to use your statement of purpose as another place to list all of your accomplishments. That's something we can already see. So there's not really any point to restating what you've already put in your application or you've already put on your resume. This is the statement of purpose is valuable real estate for you to add additional content that will, again, tell your story, who you are. The thing that I always tell people to think about are just the three building blocks. Why are you choosing this specific program? What is it going to do? How is it going to help you achieve your goals? And what are you going to bring to the program?
Very good. Yes, I switched the slide while Leanna was talking because she brought up our first point right there, what a statement of purpose should and should not include. And the first one in your introduction and brief background, include information that's not on the resume or CV or on your application elsewhere. So this is when you look at a statement of purpose, and I'm going to jump to the bottom, be careful of length. Longer is not always better. I think of a lot of the papers that I remember I wrote in college, I would fill with fluff to get up to a maximum word length so that I could, make sure that my essay was long enough. In this case, a statement of purpose, every word should have a purpose in a statement of purpose. And the more fluff you fill around it, the less likely faculty are going to see the important statement. So the analogy I always use is here in the Northeast, there are maple syrup is a big delicacy, I guess. And the thought I always have is it takes 12 gallons of sap from a maple tree to boil down into one delicious gallon of syrup. So as you are writing a statement of purpose, make sure that the statement itself is concise and meaningful versus hard to read or long. So we have a maximum word length, or you'll see schools will have a maximum word length. Don't feel like you have to hit that word length. Sometimes it's a craftier statement is the shorter statement. Jumping back up, the statement should include your current academic and career objectives. It should include what sparked your interest in this particular program. So make this statement again relevant and specific to this program and this school. And to do that, you'll want to make sure that you've already researched program specifics so that you can speak to those specifics as you are kind of showcasing the goodness of fit between you and the program you're applying to. You'll want to mention any specific goals you want the program to help you accomplish. So if you're interested in specific research, or let's say you're not interested in research and you want to take part in maybe an internship or something that's something else that the school has available to you to prepare you for industry. You'll want to speak to that. And then you'll want to state how you believe this program is going to help you reach those goals. So again, hopefully this helps give you a better understanding of what a statement of purpose should entail, how long it should be, kind of what we're looking for here at Tandon. I know every school is a bit different, but the points we make here, we tried to make as universal as possible. So hopefully if you are planning on applying to multiple schools, this information should be useful there as well. So let's switch and talk. Leanna, anything else to add?
The last thing I just wanted to really reemphasize is Ryan's point that you should be, making these different for different schools and being specific. We often get letters of recommendation or statements of purpose that say, the student is really excited to apply to the engineering program at Columbia, or, Carnegie Mellon or some other school, and that does not look good. So make sure that you are writing specific statements for the different programs, or at least changing the name of the school.
If you happen to catch where you sent us the wrong school statement of purpose, you can email the admissions department, at least here at Tandon. You can email us and let us know you've done that, and we can replace that document for you before it goes into review. Often we can do that prior. Not every school will do that, but if you do catch that you made an error like that, you can reach out to the admissions team and we will try to fix that for you. But it's even better if you just catch that before you send it. So just be very careful of that. It happens more than you think. Like any document you send out, double, triple check it before you send it to make sure that it is the correct document for the correct school. All right, let's switch over and talk a little more about testing. So we did talk a bit about this earlier, but just a few things to know about the GRE exam. I know that was something a lot of you mentioned being worried about. Generally, the GRE can be a scary test to take. One thing to know about schools is that we pay attention to the GRE is made up of 3 parts, right? There is a math section called quantitative reasoning. There's a verbal section and a writing section. At engineering schools, you're going to find that the math section is the section that I would say carries the most weight among those who are making decisions and looking at GRE scores. So if there is any consolation to the fact that you may have to take the GRE and study for it, the quantitative score is probably most important at most engineering schools. I know it is with us. You can ask us, this is a good question to ask schools, what are average scores? So you can get an idea of where to kind of aim. Just for your knowledge, our average quantitative score is a 166 out of 170. This is for an accepted student. Our average verbal score is, I believe, a 154, which is down around average, I think 50th, maybe 55th percentile. So 154. And then we really don't look at the writing scores. So there is an essay portion of the GRE that we don't really look at here. So as you are staring down the prospect of studying for the GRE, hopefully it is helpful to know that you should really only be studying hard for maybe the quantitative section of the GRE, and then brushing up on your English with that verbal section. That being said, when it comes to testing, if it's required, we will not waive it. That's something else I think that's important to know before you apply. So just in general, as you are looking at universities, if a certain thing is a requirement of application, we mean it. So every year there are students who are like, can I just not take the GRE? and if it's required, it's required. So your application will not be reviewed. It will not be looked at until all of the required application materials are on file. So if it is required of you, you need to take it. So just plan on that and plan adequate time to take the exam if it is required. Schools will require official scores of exams to be sent directly by the testing agency. So that's something else to know about the GRE. If you have a test score, you have your scores at home, you can't really just upload those and say, here are my GRE scores. We'll need them to come directly from the testing agency. The same is true of the TOEFL exam. You'll want to pay attention to specific application instructions and waiver consideration procedures. Again, for the TOEFL, Leanna already spoke on this. I know Leanna is the person that deals a lot with TOEFL waivers. Do you have anything else you want to add here, Leanna, when it comes to GRE exam or TOEFLs?
Nope.
Okay, very good. And again, only official scores are accepted for the TOEFL as well. So they'll need to arrive directly from ETS if you're taking the TOEFL or the GRE. Okay, Just wanted to talk a bit about talking with faculty. I know this is something, a big question a lot. I get both from domestic students and international students. Should I be reaching out to faculty? Is this an important part of the process? For master's applicants, the answer is no. It is not expected that you be emailing or reaching out to faculty prior to your application being reviewed. For PhD students, it is expected. So that's good to know, right? If you are planning on applying to a PhD program, you will want to reach out to the director of the research lab that you are hoping to join. So just good information to know. If you have program questions and you are thinking about reaching out to a program department director, be sure that you've kind of gone through the departmental web pages. We have very detailed departmental web pages here at NYU-Tandon that can answer many questions. So before you reach out to a department, be sure you've kind of gone through the website to make sure that the answer isn't just sitting right in front of you there on the website. Also, if you have admission related questions, contact admissions, don't contact academic departments. That's something I feel like a number of students will often do, is they'll reach out to a faculty member and be like, when's the application deadline? There's an entirely different department that Leanna and I belong to that will answer admissions related questions, and we can even help answer a lot of questions about specific departments or programs. So a good place to start really with extra questions is to contact us. And if we don't know the answer, we can often steer you to the right person. The other thing to know is that faculty are very busy. So you'll want to keep your communications concise, and then also give faculty time to respond to you. So try not to spam them, emailing them every day, or you'll want to respect their time, respect their inbox. That's something I had to learn to do. I'm somebody that's chatty, as you can tell. I would write very chatty emails, and I realized later, like, that is kind of disrespectful of people's time. I'm making them read through all of this information when in fact probably 2 bullet points would have been a better use of their time. So it's something even in my older age, I'm still learning to do. So when you write emails, when you're contacting faculty, keep your communication professional. Be careful of casual writing. Look out for slang words. Use proper email addresses. Be sure the email addresses that that I have seen, make sure that they're not a funny email address that you created in high school and you're still using. Use a proper email address. Writing complete sentences, check your spelling, check grammar, check for errors, be direct and concise. Don't make demands. That should be pretty apparent, but you would be surprised. So be careful of demanding things from faculty that will be making admissions decisions later. Be specific to the purpose of the email. Make sure that it's very clear what you are asking or what you want this email to accomplish. Check for responses to your email in spam or junk folders prior to reaching out again. Oftentimes faculty will respond and the response is sitting somewhere where you haven't looked. And then don't send or spam out form letters to multiple schools. I'll get these, and I can tell that it's just a general email where it's like I can tell I've been part of 100. An email that went out to 100 people. These will likely be dismissed, so be careful of those. And then, of course, always say thank you. Anything else with contacting faculty, Leanna?
Nope, I think that's good.
Very good. So let's go to just some final tips when applying to graduate school to help you ace this process. The first tip I would give you is to apply early. We publish deadlines. We have a deadline of December 1 coming up for our PhD applicants and our master's priority applicants. at the end of November and the first week of December, we're going to get like tens of thousands of documents all at once from everybody that's beating that deadline. And then as soon as those documents come in, we're going to get emails saying, did you get my document? Did you get my document? You'll want to avoid deadlines because everybody procrastinates, myself included. I would be the person that just beat that deadline. But who I want to be is the person that got all of their materials in on November 8th. And because of that, I was part of that group of applicants that had that trickled in early November, and their application is complete. Every document was vetted and added to the file. I can see it sitting there awaiting review, and I'm good to go. So that would be one thing I would tell you is avoid deadlines, apply early. When you do apply, be patient after you've submitted your application materials. We don't just take materials and say that you're good to go. We actually do vet materials. We'll look through and make sure the transcripts that you sent are transcripts and maybe not grade reports. That your letters of recommendation meet our qualifications, that your statement of purpose is a statement of purpose. Oftentimes people will accidentally upload a different document. It's a second resume or something. So we do vet every piece of application material, and especially around deadlines when everybody is submitting everything all at once, it will overwhelm our office for a little bit. So it may be a week or so before that document that you submitted is vetted and put into your file. So you'll want to be patient. The other thing I would tell you is follow application directions very carefully and very literally to avoid unnecessary delays in the process. So if if it does state that you need a TOEFL or you need a GRE score, your application will not be reviewed without it. And that may seem to be something that is goes without saying, but every year many people will say, you haven't reviewed my application yet. And then when I go in and try to find out why, it's because they didn't submit a GRE score and they had to. And so you'll want to follow directions just very literally. Then know who to contact when you have questions. This is not a questionless process. If questions pop up, you'll want to know a good place to go to get answers. We have an email inbox that we have a small army of people that are always answering questions in there. And so for us, that's a good place to go, but that's a good thing to know as you are reaching out to schools is where's the best place to go to get my questions answered. And then the last thing I would tell you is to check your email often for further instructions or notifications or updates regarding your application. Any other final tips or anything that popped into your head while I was speaking, Leanna?
Nope, I think we can move on to our Q&A section.
Very good.
Sanjay, did you either?
All right, so let me come in over here. Let me also just give me 1 second. Let me also spotlight myself. And Zoom is more complicated to manage than I would have thought, but let me add myself to the spotlight. Great. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Liana. Thanks for that insightful session and the presentation. To the audience, I'm sure you got a lot of insights. I see a lot of questions that have come in and quite a few upvoted questions as well. I see one question which has been upvoted 15 times. So I'm going to take up as many questions as possible. I'm going to come to those very shortly. In case you have a question as well for Liana and Ryan, you can post your question in the Q&A window, or you can skim through the list over there, list of questions already posted, and upvote the question that you find most relevant to yourself as well. Before I start taking the questions, I just want to take a second and quickly run you through a slide or through a screen. If you're able to see my screen right now, this is around the SEED Scholarship Fund. This is an exclusive scholarship fund that we as SEED Global Education have incorporated. This is mainly to facilitate your higher studies or fund your higher studies at any of the schools that work with us, including NYU-Tandon. So if you are applying to the NYU-Tandon MS program and you are looking for some external scholarships and funding, you can fill this preliminary interest form. It's a very basic, simple form, just 10 fields to be filled up, which year you're looking to study, the programs that you're looking to study, whether you're looking at a STEM leadership scholarship or a business leadership scholarship, and so on and so forth. It's a very simple form. There's also the list of the institutions we work with. So if you are applying to NYU-Tandon, you're looking for funding, and you want something to come from seats side as well, then you can fill this preliminary interest form and we can evaluate you for a scholarship as well. I am going to stop my screen share now and start going to the Q&A. I'm going to post a link to the scholarship form in the chat window. In case you weren't able to see my slide for whatever reason, you would find the link to the form in the chat window very shortly, and you can show your interest over there. With that, let me go to the questions now. And as expected, the very first question that has come up, and Liana, this is the most upvoted question right now, 15 upvotes, which is around the scholarship opportunities for MS programs at NYU-Tandon. This question has been asked by Anton George.
Yeah, so at Tandon, every student, once you're admitted, you're automatically reviewed for a scholarship. These are not full scholarships, but they are partial scholarships based on merit. So you don't have to fill out any separate application. And once you are informed about your admission, you will also be informed about your scholarship if you have received one.
All right. And Liana, just on the question of funding, besides scholarships, what can the students do? Because for students coming from this part of the world, financing is a major question. So besides the merit scholarships that they can target or try for from NYU-Tandon, any other way that they can secure some funding through some assistantships, any other external scholarships that you recommend, anything that they can do to reduce their cost of education?
Yeah, unfortunately, in the US, there is not a lot of funding available for master's programs. This is something that usually is self-funded with scholarship help. On campus, we do have, as an international student, you will be allowed to work up to 20 hours a week. So once you get to campus, you can apply for campus jobs, and that can help supplement your living expenses. Excuse me, we have a very good rate of pay at NYU. It's $27 an hour. So that really helps out. Sanjay, you mentioned assistantships, such as research assistantships, teaching assistantships. That's something that we get asked about a lot. Those types of assistantships are not available for master's students. So just to be very clear again, they are not available for master's students. Those types of assistantships are only available for PhD students, as they are a PhD. Someone who's applying for a PhD is applying for a degree, but also technically for a job position. And these are ways that they will be performing work for their lab, for their professor, for the school. As a master's student, again, we do have on-campus jobs you can apply for. There are external scholarships. I don't have a list of external scholarships available to Indian students at this point. The best bet I would suggest is to get in touch with the Education USA office. They have a very strong presence all over India, and they can help you know if there are scholarship opportunities available for you or other funding opportunities. And they have a good knowledge as well of which different universities may offer different types of scholarships and that type of thing. So really getting in touch with those organizations is really helpful. And then other students will take out personal loans as well to fund their education. International and US students will do that.
All right, great. So, Liana, thank you for those insights. Really helpful over there. The next most upvoted question that I have is from Mayank Kumar. 9 people have upvoted this is around for the courses that have a GRE waiver that do not require a GRE score to be submitted. Does providing a good GRE score give the candidate an advantage over other applicants with similar backgrounds, possibly similar profiles as well, but without GRE scores?
That's a great question, and another one that we get a lot. First, I want to say that the departments who have said they are not requiring the GRE have come up with a separate process on how to review applications. So they are not taking the GRE into consideration when they're reviewing the applications. The only time that I would suggest for you to submit a GRE score to a program that does not require it is if you feel like your application is not strong, you may have lower grades, You're trying to provide supplemental documents to let us know that you are able academically to be successful in this program. And even in that case, I would not submit the GRE unless you have a near perfect score on the quantitative section. An average GRE score will not, on these types of programs, will not affect your admission either way, because again, they are reviewing applications on a completely different way that does not involve GRE scores. So just to restate, the only time is if you have a near perfect score on the GRE quantitative section, and if you still feel like you need that to supplement lower CGPA or something along those lines.
I have spoken to some students when I've been out recruiting that mentioned that their university's career center is, or their career counselors are telling them, if it's optional, submit scores. They mean they want you to submit scores. So I've been kind of preaching across the United States that at least here that is absolutely not the case. If it's optional, we are not expecting scores. I just want to acknowledge what Leanna just said, that is absolutely the case here. If it's optional, we are not expecting scores.
Right. So that's great insight to the audience. So those of you who have been getting possibly misleading advice to submit a score, irrespective, possibly this is a fact check, a correction over here, submit only if you have an exceptional score and you're only in that case, and possibly don't submit it if it's not required for that particular course. So great, thank you, Liana, for that. Liana, we have discussed, Ryan, possibly we have discussed these questions in the past, but I still want to take it up so that it demystifies something for the audience. This question is by Yash, who is asking, can you please tell us what is the average profile, so GPA, GRE, TOEFL score of an admitted candidate applying to a MS program in CS, in computer science?
So we, first of all, the TOEFL score, like we said, there's no average TOEFL score. You either get the TOEFL, achieve the 90, or you do not achieve the 90. In terms of GRE, again, this data is very misleading because we haven't required the GRE in this program for all of our applicants on a consistent basis for the last 3 years. Before that, our average GRE score for the computer science program was about a 155 on the verbal and about a 165 on the quantitative section. Again, these numbers this is why we don't like to give numbers, because again, this is from 3 years old data. We don't require it for half of our applicants at this point. And so it shouldn't be really used as a guide. The other reason we don't usually give numbers is because when I say an average 165 quant, you immediately think, oh, I have to have above 165 quant. But you are all scientists, you're all engineers, so you know what an average is. An average means 50% of the people had below 165 and 50% had above 165. So we prefer to give minimums because our application review process is holistic. All of those elements that we talked about, that Ryan talked about, are important in the process, and scores are not something that we live and die by. The other reason is that we have applications from students from all over the world. And so calculating an average GPA from every different education system around the world is very difficult. We will say that our minimum GPA is a 3.0 on a 4.0 scale, but people from all over the world will get admitted based on their different education systems, based on which schools they attended in those countries. And so saying a straight GPA is a little misleading as well. And I also just want to make a note that we had in years past, specifically in India, it seemed like there were people who were telling students that if they had a certain profile, they would be admitted, either agents or different educational organizations. And this is also not true. There are people with good profiles that get denied all the time. And so if someone is giving you a profile and looking at your profile and saying, oh yeah, you'll definitely be admitted, or you definitely won't be admitted, it's still worth applying because they don't know the candidate pool. They don't know how much more competitive will be this year, or maybe we'll have less applicants this year. But that is my answer to the profile question, is don't get hung up on profile and just try and sell it yourself. Tell your story the best you can.
That's great advice. Thank you, Liana. I have a quick request for the audience. We are running over time now. To help me moderate this Q&A better, please upvote the questions that you think are most relevant. So there are 35 questions in the Q&A window. That's quite a few. So please identify the ones which you think are most relevant to you and just upvote those. That tells me the important questions to take up. So great. With that, I'm going to go to the next question. This is a question which has come from Uthaya Kumar, who's looking to do a MSc in Business Analytics and asking if there's a related program available at NYU-Tandon. Uthaya, I had posted this in the chat window earlier. There's a profile that we have built for NYU-Tandon. It's a profile sheet as such. All the programs offered by NYU-Tandon, MS programs by NYU-Tandon, are listed over there on that sheet. You can click the link in the chat window and go through there and find the programs list over there. Liana, my understanding is NYU-Tandon does have a business analytics program. So if there's something to add on this question, we can do that. Otherwise, we can go to the next one.
Yeah, the business analytics program is based at the Stern School of Business.
Okay, so it's with the Stern School of Business, not with NYU-Tandon. Great. All right. So that clarifies. So Uthaya Kumar, you can find the program list in the chat window. The business analytics program is offered by the Stern School of Business, which is NYU's business school. The Tandon School of Engineering does not offer a MSc in business analytics. So that clarifies your question. Ryan, Liana, the next question is around the difference between the priority deadline and the general deadline.
Sorry, say that again, between the early deadline and regular deadline?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, so we have our early deadline December 1st, a regular deadline February 15th. And I also want to caveat all of my comments here that there may be university programs that you are applying to that deal with these deadlines a little differently than we do. So just make sure that when you are applying to different programs, you also get this answer from them. But I will say for us that applying for the early deadline, you do have an advantage in terms of being admitted to the program. So I always highly encourage people to try and complete their applications by the early deadline. However, I will say that it is more important for you to have a good application than for you to get it in early. So if you need to retake the GRE, if it's required for your program, if you need this semester's grades to be on your transcript before you send them into NYU, then you should absolutely wait until the February 15th deadline. The way the faculty approaches reviewing applications is that in that first group, they will release a large number of admits and a large number of denials, and then they will hold a group of students from that early deadline who are maybe mid-range in terms of who they want to admit, to see who else is going to apply by the February 15th deadline. So the program will not fill up after December 1st. You will still have a chance to apply February 15th. But again, you do have an advantage applying early. You also will get an answer sooner. But if you need the extra time, please take it.
Thank you, Liana. Thanks for that. The next question is around application fee waivers. It's the most upvoted question right now, so I need to take this up. Liana, Ryan, does NYU offer any application fee waivers?
Yeah, we do, and you should receive an application fee waiver if you have attended this session, right, Ryan?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and if you don't, please email us and we can get it to you, or email Sanjay and we can share it with him.
Awesome, great. So this is another perk of having attended this session. You automatically become eligible for an application fee waiver from NYU-Tandon. You should receive communication about that over email. In case you don't get it or miss that communication, do reach out to us and we can check and clarify for you as well. Great. So
Yeah,
thanks.
once I get the list of attendees, within a week or so, you should be able to get an application fee waiver code. There's a section on our application called supplemental questions. So when you are applying, that's where you will find the spot to enter the code that you'll get via email. So just keep an eye out for an email from NYU.
Perfect. So let me clarify. You need to plan for 7 to 10 days from today. So wait till at least the next Friday, so the end of next week, to receive this communication before you get in touch with us. Guys, please don't bombard us with emails before that. It will be very difficult to handle all those queries. But thanks, Ryan. Thanks for clarifying that to the audience. Liana, Ryan, if I may take the next question, which is around submitting an IELTS score instead of TOEFL. I understand you accept both. So there's no challenge in the candidate submitting an IELTS score instead of a TOEFL score, right?
Nope, that's fine. And we also accept Duolingo, as well as the Cambridge English test as well.
Great. So multiple options over there. Liana, next question is from Anaka, who possibly has high work-ex, more than 5 years of work-ex. You admit any candidates to your MS programs with higher work-ex, with more than 4 or 5 years of work-ex?
Yeah, absolutely. We have people from all different backgrounds and levels of work experience joining our programs. It is not something that is unique. Even though a lot of our students are coming straight from a bachelor's degree, we definitely have several working professionals in all of our programs.
Awesome, great, Sonaka. Then a follow-on question, if I may clarify, is there an advantage to a candidate to apply with some work-ex?
I'd say with certain programs, yes, like for example, management of technology, that's a program where, you know, you're heading, aiming for a management position. And so they are often looking for students that have work experience, but a vast majority of our students are coming straight from their bachelor's program into their master's program. So I think faculty, I think they always like to have students in the classroom. It helps change I guess the conversations in the classroom when you have students that have some recent work experience. So I think faculty like to see it, but as far as whether or not that makes you a more advantaged student when it comes to the application process, I don't know, maybe a bit, but as far as like being a requirement to get accepted into a program here, absolutely not the case.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that excuse me, sorry. I'll just add to that when we were talking about when we were going through our presentation, we mentioned that what you're trying to do is tell your story. And so the only real advantage that work experience would have for you is if it really helps tell your story. So for example, you were a mechanical engineer, you worked for a couple of years and realized that you really prefer biomedical and you want to switch to that program. Telling that story and having that experience of like really solidifying what it is you want to do is really important. If you already know, like the question I get a lot is from people graduating and wanting to know if they'll have a better chance of getting admitted if they work for 2 years or 3 years. For an MBA program, 100%, that's a requirement. You have to do that. For most MS programs, if you already know what you want to do and you know you need a master's for that, then you should just do it. It's very hard to go back to school after you've been working for a while. I went back after, I think, 5 years, and it was extremely difficult to go back to school. But I needed those 5 years to figure out what it is I wanted to do and how I was going to accomplish that. And so for me, I believe those 5 years of work experience did help my application because it helped really focus my mind. It focused my statement of purpose, and I was able to more clearly communicate what it is I wanted. However, it's not a requirement for any of our programs. And so please don't just feel like you have to go into the workforce to get a better chance of being accepted to grad school. That's not the case. I would just go ahead and apply, and unless you need those years to figure out what it is you want to do.
The other danger, I was actually speaking with a faculty member at a conference about this past week. that he brought up was a lot of these programs, these master's programs in mechanical engineering or electrical engineering, they have very specific prerequisite knowledge that you need to retain. And often, depending on where you're working, if you do go out and work for even a year or two, 4 years after a bachelor's degree, and then try to go back and jump back into this field, you may find that a lot of your knowledge in specific fields of mathematics that are required in order for you to have a required understanding of in order to build on in these future courses in your master's program. I can speak from experience that a lot of that information will leave your head the moment you're not using it. And as Leanna mentioned, it can be quite an uphill battle. Even if you do adjust your work schedule or you determine I will go back to school full time, you may find that it is very difficult because a lot of this foundational knowledge that you had as a senior in college has eroded away sufficiently enough that it can be very hard to restart your field 4 years later, even though you've been working in your field. So just something else to be cognizant of as you are debating, do I hop into industry for a bit, or knowing that I want to do this, do I do it now and kind of make sure I get it done and move on? So another compelling reason, I was like Leanna, I needed time to figure out what I really wanted to do. So I did go back later. But it was also very difficult. If I would have known the field I wanted to go into as a senior in college, I would have jumped right in. I think that would have been the best track for me.
That's really sound advice and insights. A follow-on question which has come in up from Sneha about this is for people with work experience with 4 to 5 years of work ex, whom do they approach for getting their LORs? They've been away from studies for 4 or 5 years. Their faculty have possibly forgotten them during this time. Who do they go for getting their LORs?
I will say that if at all possible, they should have one academic reference. If not, then they can use letters of recommendation from their work experience, a supervisor or someone who has supervised them on a certain project, something like that. What the purpose of the letters of recommendation are to really provide context and color to the application, but it is an academic program, and so if you can get an academic letter of recommendation, then that is very highly encouraged.
All right, great. Thanks for that. The next, so I'm just going to take 2-3 more questions. We are significantly over time now, but I'm just going to take the last 2 questions possibly. Sai-Sri, Sneha, your question about GRE required for the computer engineering program, or is GRE being mandatory? Ryan had shown this in his presentation that some of their programs do require a score, some don't. So my advice would be to check the website, go to NYU-Tandon website, go to the programs, and see if it's a requirement for that specific program or not. I hope that answers. Is that all right, Liana, Ryan? This is fair advice?
Yeah, I just put our in the chat. I just put our GRE requirements page, so you can see the chart that shows which programs require the GRE and which do not.
Perfect. So I'm just going to post it. I'm just going to share it again because I think Ryan's post was just to the hosts and panelists. Let me just post it for everyone in the chat window. That's the link for Tandon's your GRE requirement as such. So you can go there, check which programs require the score, which don't. Okay, I'm going to take 1 or 2 last questions, and possibly this is a relevant question to some of them. This is a question asked by Anugraha, who's asking about backlogs. Is having a backlog history a barrier to getting an admit at NYU?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the question.
So, Liana, in India, there's a possibility if someone is not clearing 1 or 2 of their courses exams, if they're not passing those exams, then they can go to the next year. So for possibly from 2nd year of engineering, they can go to the 3rd year and complete those 2 papers or 2 course exams in the 3rd year. So it's a carry forward as such of a course. So does having carry forwards or backlogs a limitation to their chances if they apply to NYU-Tandon?
A lot of these questions about what are my chances, we have stated what the requirements are. So if you meet those requirements, you can apply to the program. We require you to have a bachelor's degree. And so if you are going to be earning a bachelor's degree, whatever method it took to get you there, you're still eligible to apply. Each faculty member from each different program may look at those and view them differently, but we don't have a standard policy on that at the university.
All right, great. And Brian, Liana, any programs at Tandon that admit candidates with a 3-year undergraduate degree? So overall 15 years of education and a 3-year undergraduate degree, or is that a no-go as of now?
Nope, we need the equivalent of a US bachelor's degree, which unfortunately is a 4-year degree.
So minimum 16. So Komal and someone else would ask this question. So you need minimum 16 years of education for any of the programs at Tandon. So do take that into account. All right. And I think Ikra's question has already been answered, which is around specific scholarships or funding opportunities for PhD students, and whether they need to give GRE for getting into the PhD program in bioinformatics. So Liana, if you want to share thoughts, or do we want to redirect them to the website for this?
Ryan, are you looking for something?
No, so the question was about, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Sorry.
This is about PhD program in bioinformatics. So is a GRE score required for the PhD in bioinformatics? And are there any scholarships, specific scholarships for PhD students at Tandon?
So we do not have a PhD program in bioinformatics at NYU-Tandon. We have a PhD in biomedical engineering and we have a PhD in computer science, but not in bioinformatics. PhD students are not generally, their funding does not generally come in terms of scholarship. Basically, as I mentioned earlier, you are getting admitted to a program, but you're also being hired for a job. And so the funding that you are getting is coming from a specific faculty member's project that has been funded either by the government, by a private company, by some other sort of research grant. So when you are admitted, most likely you will receive a funding offer, which will be a combination of scholarship and then teaching assistantship, research assistantship, or graduate assistantship and a stipend. So it's a very different process than applying to a master's degree and a very different program that you're signing up for.
All right, so I know we still have a lot of unanswered questions, 34 questions still in the Q&A window. And if we go on with this Q&A, I think we'll be here for another 2-3 hours. So I'm going to wrap up this session now. My apologies to those whose questions I haven't been able to take up. It is possible that if your question is profile specific, or if you really want an answer to that, possibly I would recommend reaching out to the NYU-Tandon's team, maybe find the contact information on the website, send in your query over there, and get clarification over there. A lot of the information is available on the website, so you can find it in the program list, on the program website, about requirements for certain programs, the course options that are there. So do your research before you reach out. A lot of the questions I'm seeing are redundant because that information is already on the website. So do your thorough research before you reach out to the Tandon team with your following questions. Thank you for attending this session to the audience. Thank you for taking out the time. I still see around 150 people in the room. So thank you for being a patient audience. We went maybe 15-20 minutes over time. So thank you for being a patient audience. I hope you found this session insightful. I personally did. So thank you for attending this session. And thank you to Ryan and Liana for taking out the time to interact with our audience today and giving them insights on how they can ace the NYU-Tandon application process and make a great application to improve their admission chances and possibly improve their scholarship chances as well. So thank you, Liana. Thank you, Ryan, for doing this session. Those of you who missed some parts of this session, the recording is available on SEED's YouTube channel, so you can go find the recording over there. We will also send out a WhatsApp message to those who attended this session with the YouTube recording link and the school's profile as well. So make the most of these resources and make a great application to NYU-Tandon. All the best.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day, Liana. Have a great day, Brian. And thank you to the audience. Have a great evening as well. Take care.